hollow bronze bull, a fire below. Inside, its own creator burns. Perilaus proudly showed the bull, but the tyrant coldly ordered, "Prove it works. Get inside." The creator became the first victim. As the bronze heated, Perilaus' agonizing screams passed through internal tubes, emerging only as the deep, terrifying bellow of a beast. 26 centuries later, the warning remains. Cruelty always turns on its creator. Subscribe to Midnight Relics and remember the forgotten. A bronze bull, hollow inside, a fire burning underneath, and inside a man, the same man who built it with his own hands. This is Midnight Relics, where the darkest punishments in history are the ones the record tried to erase. Tonight we go back to 6th century BC Sicily, where a sculptor built a machine to kill men, believing it would make him rich. Instead, he became its first victim. Parts of this story are disputed by historians. Its cruelty is not something anyone forgot. Around 570 BC, the city of Agrigento, Sicily. Ruling it is a man named Phalaris, a tyrant whose name alone was enough to make people bolt their doors. Ancient sources describe him as a ruler willing to do almost anything to hold on to power. Rumors of far darker acts followed him too, though these claims are disputed. Ancient writers often exaggerated the crimes of tyrants to discredit them politically. But one story survives across multiple ancient accounts, repeated too consistently to dismiss outright. In the city lived a sculptor and metalworker named Perilaus. He came to Phalaris' court with a proposal, a machine that would give the tyrant a new, more effective way to punish his enemies. Perilaus built a massive bronze bull, hollow inside, a door on one side through which a man could be sealed in, a fire built beneath it, designed to heat the bronze slowly until the person trapped inside was burned alive. But the real horror was in the details. Inside the bull's nostrils, Perilaus installed a complex system of tubes. As the victim screamed, their agony would pass through those tubes and emerge transformed, turned into what sounded like the bellow of a bull. The cries of a dying human, engineered so that anyone standing outside would never recognize them as human suffering at all. Perilaus built it with pride. He believed this invention would make him the tyrant's favorite. He was wrong, but that was only the beginning. Perilaus brought the bull before Phalaris. He described its function with pride. He showed off the metalwork. He explained the tube system, how a man's screams would become a deep, animal roar. The ancient historian Diodorus Siculus, who recorded this account, writes that Phalaris looked at the machine with disgust. But that disgust was not aimed at Perilaus' cruelty. In that moment, the tyrant made a decision that has echoed through history ever since. Phalaris told Perilaus, "Prove it works. Get inside." Perilaus hesitated. This was supposed to be a demonstration, a sales pitch. He had never imagined he would be the first person to test his own creation. But there was no room to say no in front of Phalaris. Guards forced him into the bull. The door sealed. The fire below was lit. This moment reveals the darkest truth buried inside the whole story. Any instrument of cruelty built to serve power can, in the end, consume the very hand that built it. Cruelty owes no loyalty to its creator. The bronze began to heat. Perilaus' screams passed through the tubes exactly as he had designed them, emerging as the roar of a beast. The courtier standing outside heard the sound and had no idea it was a man's final agony. Some ancient accounts, though historians dispute this detail, claim that Phalaris ordered Perilaus pulled out at the last moment, before death, so he wouldn't die inside completely. He was dragged out and thrown from a cliff instead, a different path to the same end. Why the change of method? Historians disagree. Some read it as the last flicker of mercy in an otherwise merciless man. Others read it as something crueler still. Perilaus kept alive only to suffer a second death. After Perilaus' death, the bronze bull wasn't destroyed. Instead, it became a symbol of Phalaris' rule. According to ancient sources, Phalaris went on to use the machine against his enemies. Political rivals, rebels, anyone he considered a threat. Every use deepened the fear running through the streets of Agrigento. The sound of that bull, the distorted roar, could be heard across the city, and people knew exactly what it meant. They knew someone was burning alive inside it. But from the outside, it sounded like an animal crying out. That design choice is the story's most psychologically disturbing detail. Even the right to be heard suffering was taken from the victims. Phalaris' reign did not last. Around 554 BC, he was overthrown in a popular uprising. And according to legend, though this too is disputed, he was executed inside the very same bronze bull he had used against so many others. This full-circle ending is so dramatically neat that many modern historians suspect it was added later as a moral lesson, more symbolic truth than historical fact. But the story has survived for nearly 26 centuries because it holds on to something people refuse to let go of. And that is where everything changed. Accounts of the bronze bull appear across multiple ancient writers: Diodorus Siculus, Cicero, Pindar, and Lucian. These independent overlapping sources make it hard to dismiss the story entirely as invention, even as specific details, especially Perilaus' fate, likely grew more elaborate with each retelling. Archaeologically, no actual bronze device of this kind has ever been found. That absence leaves historians with a lasting question. Was this literal fact, or a metaphor for tyrannical cruelty that calcified into history over time? But the story's importance runs deeper than the question of whether it's literally true. It shows how power engineers cruelty, how suffering can be designed so precisely that witnesses no longer recognize it as suffering at all. And it carries a warning that never expires. Whoever builds an instrument of cruelty can never be certain it won't turn on them. 26 centuries later, the story of the bronze bull still survives, because it isn't only the story of one ancient tyrant. It's a warning. Any system built to inflict suffering on others can turn against the very person who built it. Cruelty answers to no master, only to whoever holds it, for as long as they hold it. Perilaus thought he would earn praise. He earned a death inside the fire he designed himself. Phalaris thought his power would last forever. History, if the legend is true, gave him the same ending. Stories like this are buried throughout history's darker corners, reminders that cruelty never finds a safe pair of hands. If this story stayed with you, there are more like it waiting in the dark. Subscribe to Midnight Relics. Let the forgotten be remembered. Here are the 4 key lessons from this history for the audience of Midnight Relics. 1. Cruelty consumes its creator. Any instrument or system of cruelty built to serve power will eventually turn on the very hands that created it. Ruthlessness owes no loyalty to its maker. 2. The trap of blind ambition. Engineering suffering or enabling tyrants for personal gain or favor is a fatal mistake, as unchecked power will easily sacrifice its most loyal servants. 3. Justice of history is absolute. No matter how absolute a tyrant's control seems, history proves that oppressive regimes eventually collapse, often forcing the oppressors to face the exact horrors they inflicted. 4. The danger of silencing suffering. When human agony is deliberately distorted, masked, or ignored by society to maintain a false sense of normalcy, it marks the ultimate collapse of moral conscience.